tonight.
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
To the living God,
to the living God.
no one can deny
No one can deny
that Jesus Christ
Jesus Christ is the Most High.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
That video, in my opinion, gets to the crux of the matter of what this entire series is about. Christmas has become to be something that is not even recognizable from what it was intended to be. And what I'm challenging each and one of us to do within this series is to, instead of just doing Christmas, instead of just being out and buying and decorating and going to parties and having a good time, that we push through that and begin to be Christmas. Begin to represent Christ and begin to show people what it means to be a Christian during Christmas. So we started this sermon series, and the first thing we said was we kind of have to start out with what it was really intended. And this time of year, called Advent, was intended to remind us to worship Christ. Last week, Brother Lyons talked to us about the why of the season, and he talked about that the why of the season is love. And today, I want to talk to you about the action of the season. The action of the season is generosity. And what I want to do is I want to push you to be more generous. Now, let me just go ahead and answer your question. Because 2 weeks ago I came and I talked with you about spending too much money. A couple weeks ago I came and I told you we need to stop spending so much money, that we need to focus on worshiping God, that we need to take the focus off of gifts and decorations and shipping stuff and partying, and put all that focus on Jesus. Let me just clean something up real quick, because I got the impression from talking to a few people after service that I was kind of coming across as the Grinch. And let me just clear up a few things. First of all, there is nothing wrong with decorating. There's nothing wrong with celebrating. There's nothing wrong with giving gifts to children. They deserve gifts. There's nothing wrong with having some fun during the holiday season. What I was trying to explain last year is that those things cannot be the reason for your season. That those things only happen after we've done everything that we can to worship God. And one of those things that we can do more than anything during this time of the year is to be generous. Now, there is a difference between generosity and gift giving. When the Bible talks about us being generous, it's when you look outside of yourself and you see a need inside of somebody else, and you give and with no expectation. You don't want anything back from them in return. That's generosity. Gift giving is what we do around Christmas time, when we give our children and our husband and our mama and our daddy and our sisters and our boss or our friends a gift. And that is not generosity. But the season is predicated on generosity. It starts with this huge gift that God gives to us through Christ. I want to go back to that verse where Dr. Lyons started last week. And it says in John 3:16, he says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." See, generosity is the action that is associated with love. When you love somebody, when you love mankind, when you love the people around you, when you love your neighbors, when you love your family, you give. But this is a special kind of giving. So let's kind of look at it in full context. He says that he gave his only begotten son. He gave the only thing that he had. Who did he give it to? That whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. He gave his only begotten son to us. He says, for God sent not his son into the world to condemn the world. He could have ended the world. The world was a complete mess. It was no different than it is today. It was a complete mess. What the world deserved, what the world should have received, was an end. And what it got instead was an act of generosity. Just a random act of generosity happens in Bethlehem. It comes through this virgin birth. It is a gift for us because we were in need. He says, but that the world through him might be saved. And what these verses are telling us is that this wasn't just a random kind of gift. He just didn't kind of figure out what is it that these people might like, what is it that they might want, what do they not have enough of. But he identified that we had a significant need. We were all about to be dead in our sins. And there was only one thing that he could give. There was no trying to figure out, do I get the right sweater? Do I get her a dress? Do I get her perfume? You know, all the things that bring us anxiety throughout the season. There was no question about what had to happen. The only thing that could fix the problem that we had, that could meet the need that we had, was a perfect sacrifice, Jesus Christ. And this whole season, this is John's account. This is different from the accounts that we've seen in Matthew and the other account where we are looking at what happened on this wonderful day. But this goes before that day, and it explains to us the real reason, the why, as Dr. Lyons said, for the season. And what this teaches us is that this thing called generosity, giving to people in need, even if they won't appreciate it, even if they won't acknowledge you, even if they don't take it, even if they don't want it, but still giving from this place of sacrifice to somebody else who doesn't have anything, that you don't need anything from them. All you want to do is help them, is the reason for this season. So how in the world do we get here? How in the world do we get to this place where everything we do is about just gift giving, just giving people who we like or who we love or who we want some from or who we are proud of or whatever the case may be, a bunch of gifts. We're going to spend over $50 billion. $50 billion is going to be spent in America this holiday season on stuff. That's how much we love each other, that we are going to buy $50 billion in stuff. And this entire season that is all about generosity, not gift giving, generosity, very few people are going to be generous. People are going to spend more on lights to decorate the outside of their house than feeding people who don't have food on their table. People are going to spend more on Christmas trees and clothes than providing clothes to people. Do you realize how cold it was last night? Do you understand that while we were in our warm beds, that there were people in this city, families in this city, downtown with no shelter, no heater. The wind was blowing. It did not make a difference. Some of them didn't have adequate covers. But our trees were on all night and gifts all under the trees, warm air blowing, blankets covering us. All a week before Christmas. So I started to do some research. How did we get here? How did we get in this spot? Because I think we should have fun. I'm not against us having fun. Let's have fun. But I do think that there is a call for generosity that each one of us have. And I wanted to get kind of to the bottom of how we got here. And I researched this Christmas thing because, believe it or not, before the Dutch came to America, Christmas was not a holiday that we celebrated at all. There's nothing in the Bible. The only thing in the Bible about Christmas trees is something that you don't want to read in Jeremiah 10, because it basically talks about how the pagan took trees, put decorations on them, and placed them in their houses. So you don't even want to read that. But I started to wonder, how do we get here? So listen, I'm telling you something. I'm about to do some teaching today. You guys better get ready for this teaching that's about to come. You don't have to say amen, because I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you today how we got here. Now, this is what they told you if you grew up like me in Sunday school. You were told, because these wise men came and gave Jesus gifts, we now give each other gifts for Christmas. That is not the reason why we give each other gifts. That was a good answer to get you back sitting down and to make sure that you brought that Sunday school teacher a gift. But it is not the truth. Matter of fact, if you even think about the logic in that, there's so much misrepresentation in that sentiment, because listen, they were giving gifts to the Lord and King. And what we've done is we've replaced the Lord and King, and we've made those things. Let me tell you something. The thing that you're buying the most gifts for, the thing that you're giving the most money to during this season, is the thing that has replaced the Christ in your life more than likely. Whether it be your decorating, whether it be your children, whether it be your husband, if you really did an honest assessment of what that person means to you and where you're spending that money on, you would see that, there's a little bit of pushing that person up high, or pushing that thing up high. Where this all comes from is a tradition that the Dutch brought over in the 1800s to our country. It's called, this guy named, and you might not even recognize his name was Saint Nicholas. Saint Nicholas. We rarely ever hear his real name, but Saint Nicholas was probably one of the most generous bishops of his time. He was a bishop around the 4th century, and he was known as the giving bishop. He was always giving. And so he had a particular instance where he knew a nobleman who didn't have any money, and back during this time, in order for you to get married, a young lady to get married, you had to bring this thing called a dowry, I believe is how you pronounce it. And basically, you had to bring to your husband some money, some property or something in order for him to marry you. Now, we've kind of gotten rid of all that kind of stuff. But this is how it used to be during this time, right? And this one particular man, he had 3 daughters and no money. And so Saint Nicholas, seeing this man that didn't have any money, couldn't marry off any of his daughters, decided to do this random act of kindness. What he did was he put some gold inside of a package, 3 packages. True story. He threw those 3 packages through the window at this guy's house so that this guy could marry his 3 daughters off. Now, he did that for nobody to know about him. That's partly why he became a saint. He was a pope. He eventually became a saint. But people found out about it. And what people started doing all throughout Turkey where this happened at, was they started during this holiday season giving these random acts of kindness. And instead of saying, hey, this is from the Means family, they would say, this is from Saint Nicholas. Now, we're in the United States. We have no idea about any of this kind of stuff. Now, we love Jesus. We founded this country. We founded for religious freedom. And then the Dutch come into this country with this tradition. And you know what we did as Americans? We did exactly what we do always. We supersized it. We got rid of the name St. Nicholas. It reminds us too much of a pope or of God or what have you. We shortened that thing and changed it around to Santa. We got rid of the Nick part of this and just called them Claus. And then we started to add all this mythology to it. He had all these superpowers, flying reindeer, you know, because we like the story to be big in America. He had flying reindeer, one of them with this magical nose. He had, listen, a bag of unlimited gifts. He was this big guy, huge guy, but he had this strange power. It's like a superpower where he could shrink all the way down into a chimney pipe size and come into your house. We supersized this thing that was about generosity. This guy was going around helping people. This guy was generous all the way to his death. St. Nicholas went to prison for the faith. And in prison, through his generosity, he converted like half the prison to Christ. But Santa Claus, he changed the entire way that we think about this season. Now, I don't know about you, but I can deal with the reindeer. I can deal with the shrinking man and all that stuff. I have no problems with that because it just doesn't bother me. But the loss of generosity in all this is criminal. The fact that we replace giving to others in need with giving to our children and our mates and our family and putting stuff on our houses and putting stuff inside of our houses. The fact that we moved from something that was intended to help us be more generous, to remember Christ, to be more Christ-like, to be Christmas, to this fat guy. It's crazy. So my goal today, I got a goal today. My goal today is to flip this for you. I want it to where you make St. Nick the big part of your Christmas and make Santa Claus. I'm not telling you can't have fun. I'm not telling you can't have a good time. I'm not telling you not to give anybody a gift. But what I'm trying to do is to move you toward the place where Christmas becomes more about being like St. Nicholas, being generous, helping people in need, being there for people who have genuine needs, and less like Santa Claus. I want to go back to Philippians 2. We're going to spend time in Philippians 2. We started in Philippians 2 the first week because Philippians 2 gives us the most information for what it means to be like Christ. And I want us to just kind of go through these verses real quick and get an understanding of how we become generous. We'll start at verse 3. It says, "Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit." You want to get to be generous? Stop doing things out of selfish ambition. Stop doing things out of conceit. Stop doing things so people can see you. He says, "But in lowliness of mind, let each one of us esteem others better than ourselves." Why don't we think better about other people instead of always trying to think better about ourselves? He says, "Let each of you look out not only for his own interest." Here's a novel idea. Why don't we focus on the interests of others? Let any of us, instead of focusing on our own children during this season, instead of focusing on our own houses, our own decorations, our own mates, why don't we think about people who are downtown without heat? Wouldn't Christ like that about us? If we, instead of thought about how much food we were going to cook and consume and throw away, you know, they said about 60% of everything you cook during the holidays ends up in the trash can. But why don't we buy half the food that we would normally buy and give food away on Christmas or during Christmas? Instead of buying all these clothes, you know, all the stuff that we do, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Over $50 billion is going to be spent this year. But what if we took $25 billion and invested that in our homeless problem, in our hungry problem, cancer research, to help people who need deliverance from cancer? What difference would that make? And so the first step to being generous, the first thing that we have to do if we want to be generous is we have to start with thinking about the needs of others. Stop thinking about you, your kids, your family, your house, your job. Start thinking about other people. Do you realize that there's a family just like yours, whether you're single, whether you are married, whether you're single with children? There's a family just like you in this city who doesn't have anything to eat tonight. There's somebody just like you on the street right now, or filing into, if they're lucky, some shelter tonight. What would Christ want you to do about that? Let's go a little bit further. He says, verse 5, he says, make your attitude that of Christ Jesus. And I want you just to think about this for a second, because it's a very powerful thing that Paul does here. He attacks the attitude. And some of what you're fighting with now, and I feel it, is an attitude. Because everything that you have been taught since you were this small has been about mine, M-I-N-E. Mine, 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 me, hours, hours, hours. And what Jesus is talking about through Paul in these verses is he's trying to move you from a mine mentality to an hour mentality. This guy walks up to Jesus and he says, tell me, what is the greatest commandment of all the commandments? And Jesus says, that's easy. Love God and love your neighbor. Not love God and love yourself, or love your kids, or love your neighbor. And Jesus said, if you take those two, then you wrap up all of the commandments. Because you wouldn't steal from somebody that you love, now would you? You wouldn't kill somebody that you love. If you could master this loving your neighbor thing, it completely changes not only your life, but it completely changes this world. Imagine what this world would be like right now if the focus was on loving our neighbors instead of loving ourselves. He says it's an attitude change that has to occur. He says that Jesus, who existing in the form of God, did not consider equality with God as something to be used for his own advantage. Instead, he emptied himself out. I want you to picture this now. Jesus is in heaven with his Father. He has everything. Everything. And he decides to give up everything so that he could come to earth for us. And I got to thinking about that. You know, I think that there's something that we can do right now in this holiday season that is similar to what Jesus has done for us. And that is for you to consider divesting some of your stuff. We got more stuff than we got closets. You know, we get so much stuff that one of the fastest growing businesses in the United States is storage facilities, because we get so much stuff that we fill up every closet in our house, we fill up our garage, we fill up our attic, and now we got to go and pay somebody $58, $98 a month in order to put the rest of our stuff in there. But I got a thought for you. Why not this year and going forward every year at Christmas, why don't you take time to divest your stuff? You listen, your children have PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4. They only play with the 4. 1 and 2 is in a closet somewhere. 3 is underneath the 4th one. Why not give that away? Don't put it on Craigslist. Why not take that to the Salvation Army? Why not give that to somebody that you know cannot afford to buy that? Those children will be happy with a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2, a PlayStation 3. Your children won't even turn it on anymore. We buy new clothes every year. What about the old clothes? Why don't we divest those things? Why don't we put those into bags and take those out and give those to people and to organizations that can get those into the place where it can be used? What about food? Why don't we divest? Why don't we start eating just a little bit less? And start making a conscious effort to get food into the mouths of children who are not going to eat. Let's go a little bit further. He says, verse 7, he says, instead, he emptied himself by assuming the form of a slave. He said he took on the likeness of men, and when he had come as a man in his external form, he says that Jesus takes on this form of a man, but becomes a slave. I got something for you to think about doing if you want to be more generous. Why don't you consider serving more? Matter of fact, I'll take an opportunity to put a shameless plug in for Brookdale. We're going to Brookdale in the morning to worship Christ with people who they're not going to get any Christ unless we don't come on Sunday. Well, why don't you get out of your bed? I know it's going to be cold in the morning. It may even be raining in the morning. But why don't you get out of the warmth of your house and make your way down to this nursing home and allow for these people to see God through you? What's stopping you from getting into Reedy Creek Elementary School and serving? What's stopping you from getting into the elementary school closest to your house and serving children? What's stopping you from picking up a book and reading with children? What's stopping you from helping people, homeless people, people all around the world? What's stopping you? And I'm not talking about just throwing money at it. Amen. But what's stopping you from cutting time out of your day to go and spend some time with some children or some adults who need you? Listen, they need you. They need to see you. They need the encouragement that comes from having your presence there. They need to see Christ in you. What happens when we're generous? Well, the first thing that happens is we reach people for Christ. When you're down at Brookdale, or when you're out at Reedy Creek, or when you're out in the community and you're out being generous, you are reaching people for Christ. Listen, you never know who sees what you're doing. You never know the impact on your life testimony to the community and the people who are around you. But not only do we reach people for Christ, but we begin to help people in need. We have significant amount of need even within Charlotte, even within this radius. I know that we kind of look around these houses and we think that everybody got it together, but I can tell you from being at a Title I school less than 2 miles away from here that there's significant need. But we also are able to show people what it means to be a Christian. We are able to show people what Christmas is about. We become Christmas. So what's the benefit to you? I'm asking you to think differently. I'm asking you to move from a gifting mindset. And let me tell you a secret real quick. The reason why gifting is such a hard activity is because you're too much in it. You're not just meeting a need. You are thinking about if that person's going to like what you gave them. You can't even see the irony in that the pressure and the stress that comes out of this season, it comes because you are worried about what people are going to feel about you. What happens to us, the reward that comes to us for being generous people, for being like Christ has told us to be in Philippians 2, the reward that comes to us is that, first of all, we meet the goal, right? That is our goal as Christians. Listen, I don't know what you thought you were signing up for. When you became a Christian, when you gave your hand to this church and you gave your heart to God, when you said, hey, I want to be a Christian, you did not sign up for something that was considered to be easy. You signed up for being more like Christ every single day of your life. Every day you go to bed, every day you wake up, the first thing on your mind is, how can I be more like Christ? And the way that we are more like Christ, we are most like Christ when we're generous. But not only do we become more like Christ, which is our goal, but listen, you begin to strengthen your faith. When you see how God uses your generosity to make a difference to people who are in need, you become more strong in your own faith. When you hear the testimonies of folk and you see how many people got fed and you see how many people got clothes and you see the difference that you're able to make, when you see the scores at Reedy Creek going up, when you see the change in the environment around you, when you start to see your children emulate you, not being the arrogant you, the get folk told you, but the generous you. The person that thinks about others, the generous you, the person that puts others in front of them, the generous you, the person that you would like your children to be. This is who we want our children. We want them to share. We want them to be nice. And the only way we get there, parents, is that we emulate Christ, is that we be like Christ. Not only do we be a little bit more like Christ, not only do we strengthen our faith, but finally, you experience true joy. Dr. Lyons said it. He said it again the other day. I will never forget this. I think he got it from his Sunday school teacher. Maybe that same Sunday school teacher that told him to give the gifts. But true joy comes from putting Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. And listen to me, you may think that feeling that you get when you see the children opening the gifts, that feeling that you get when you see your wife, your husband open that gift, you may think that the feeling that you get when you see your mom or dad open the gift, and just so you know, 1/3 of all gifts that are given every year are returned. That's not the joy when you compare it to the joy that you'll receive from living a generous life, from serving, from giving of what you have. I'm not asking you to go and divest all your 401k and give all your money to the poor. That is what Jesus said to one person. But all I'm saying is just give away some of the stuff that you don't want anymore. So each one of us today, we're all starting at the same place. We all have a choice between St. Nicholas, being a St. Nicholas Christian, or being a Santa Claus Christian. The way that you act, remember earlier, is going to make one of these grow really big. And the question that I have for you today is a very simple question. The question I have for you today is, which one of these do you believe Jesus wants you to be? Do you believe that Jesus wants you to be a generous person or a gift giver? Do you believe that Jesus wants you to put the focus on his birth during this season or on reindeer? I don't know about you. I can't make an individual decision for you. But I can make a decision for this church. And we will be a St. Nicholas church. Matter of fact, I feel led to, on this weekend every year, to take everything that we took up in this pan today, and we're going to donate it every year, the week before Christmas. Everything that we put in today, we're going to take 100% of that money that we put in these pans today, and we're going to go out and we're going to be generous with it. And we're going to do that from now as long as God allows this church to stand. Amen? Amen. Now, what are you going to do? What generous act are you going to pick up? What thing are you going to change to represent Christ better than you have in years past. I want to leave you with this. I will show the world the Christ in me by living a life of generosity. I don't know about you as an individual, but I have made a decision today. I'm going to live a generous life. I'm going to look for needs, and I'm going to do everything in my power to try to help people with those needs. I'm going to dedicate my life so that everybody who sees me understands what it means to be a Christian. And I'm talking about being a St. Nicholas Christian and not a Santa Claus Christian. To God be the glory.
Here we stand in the presence of our Savior.
It's an honor
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
to the living God.
to the living God.
No one can deny.
No one can